Well, welcome, Cricketeers. How have you been doing all week? And I hear crickets. Par for the course. We're going to have to do a whole lot better, folks. I don't make that rule. Thank you for tuning in anyway, even if you aren't the crickets. You know what I'm talking about here. But we have the merry Cricketeers now. We're just having a grand old time, boy. We got all the crickets now. It's 78-degree ticket crickets, the 68-degree crickets. I think we have maybe even a 62-degree cricket. But anyway, we got all temperature crickets. The cricket band now, the merry Cricketeers, is full blown. And I hear crickets. And that proves the point. And that's not going to really be good enough. And I don't know how many times I'm going to have to say that. I know it's boring. It's the same entry every time I get in. But and I wish I could say different. There's just nothing more I can say. I've looked around. I've looked for the points of weakness. I've looked at the demands on us. I've tried to figure it out. I didn't come to this thing lying to myself as best as I could figure it out. Now, somebody, time has been testing is the tail of the tape here. I don't know that there's been anybody that's really, in any substantive way, been able to show my interpretation of what I've found was incorrect enough that we shouldn't be doing at least the objective things I'm suggesting we do, which is go read the black and white first to find what we are up against and what we have available. Actually, to me, it was determining who the enemy was, what it was, how it was situated, and I guess I'm a fairly decent general, I guess, in a way, for each one of us is that. I've been able to figure things out just by reading and just taking certain things face value and that they mean something. Not creating big questions about lots of things. When it wasn't what I thought it was, I say, wow, I was really confused. Yes, remember, we probably have a 33rd degree cricket as well, here or there, right amongst us, giving us the example of cricketum. And howdy, Grammy Z in the RLM chat. All y'all in the chats, thank you very much for being there. Again, I'm just still looking. I haven't even switched over. I realize that I'm not talking about my tabs too much anymore. So I don't get. But the chats kind of confuse me. So I apologize for not being able to do that. I don't multitask that way so well. I find a lot of misinterpretation goes on, and I'd rather just keep going on with the information that I come to, which starts out something or during the week and changes as soon as I come on to the time that. But I do hit a couple things. Remember, we're kind of lots of places. I don't remember where they all are to get the broadcast. Spreaker's one of them, a big one that you get the broadcast, and that I noticed, and it's always been amazing. I'm going to just air this out to you. I've asked you about this before, as it's a quandary to me. Last week, I kind of went off of most of my tabs, as I did the week before, and I just started talking nuts and bolts in a way, trying to make it as foundational, but is also as simple to understand as possible. And it always amazes me. Those are the weeks that I really don't seem to get the count downloads, or at least the clicks on them. Whether or not you click there and continue listening, I'll never know. But it's interesting that there's like a predisposition, intuition, not to go to click on the weeks I'm looking, listen, okay, well, that was good and substantial nuts and bolts for people. And it's consistent. How do people know not to go click that week is really kind of a neat thing. I mean, we do have a collective consciousness. If I had any proof, maybe that's it. That we stay away where we need to get the nuts and bolts that would tell us that we need something to do, and so we don't have that consciousness of our own beating down on ourselves. It's pretty interesting. So, in a way, I'm disappointed, but in a way, I can't help that either, and it's just us. And I don't have anything to put into this thing other than to tell you, you have to stand up and stop the thing that's against you. For as much as you felt beat down and not listened to, that was because they had us over a barrel, and they were having their way with us, and we didn't understand how that works. And what little insight I can bring is such a big change in this whole thing that it becomes the change, which is what they were telling you they would bring, which wasn't what they promised, which was their change. You had to keep, remember. They want change. Your objective was to keep. And why? As I focus on it, is because there was a certain thing in the United States of America that was different than all the world, and I've explained it to you before. And that's what we have to keep, is that property, the property law, the documents that prove it, and a judiciary that's true to that, not the one that's been interposed, supplanting your whole system, folks. And in a way, I got a little bit of feedback from a new listener. And thank you, Vince, for reminding me as I looked at it. I haven't got to my tabs yet. This broadcast for those past casters, whether it's played on ucy.tv, and thank you, Jules, for all that, and anywhere else, is BTWRLM165. BTWRLM165. You want to know what my links are for this broadcast? You go right to there in a search engine. You put in Behind the Woodshed, and that page should pop right up to the top. So, and thank you to Grimner for getting the system that allows us to do the background for that awareness in the search engines. So, I was given a little bit of feedback last week, and thank you again to Vin Z in the chat room for bringing somebody else to listen, whose response to me was, I think if I remember this correctly, that I was a bit of a taskmaster. And so I've not really heard that. I never really get that kind of feedback, but that's important. And I found it interesting because I don't perceive myself as that, but I started to think about it, and it made sense in some regards. I do kind of demand a certain thing. Why? Because you being free and independent and non-dependent of a certain thing and being of your own, on your own terms, is a continuing high-level task mastery. And so I don't conceive myself as a taskmaster, but that's what it takes. And so that's what you put on yourself. This is and I know it's a lot of work that way. We don't want to do that. We're apathetic. We want to procrastinate. Believe me, I am those characteristics. That is me. I have to just destroy my own self in that apathy, because I'd sure like to sit down and just relax. It really would be nice. But we had to keep what we were gave. That didn't hit very many people. So in a way, I had to appreciate the feedback. I do thank the new listener, whether they are back in listening, I don't know, but that is exactly the point. But I'm not really wanting to be a taskmaster on you. I'm trying to suggest to you that this task mastery is on us to do, so that we keep off this nonsense that we're all here to listen about, whether or not we do such certain things. I'm finding that things need to be done. I know things is a bad thing to say. It's just like the word stuff. What does it all mean? Well, part of that, you'll get that when you find the thing that's wrong that you need to make right. So I appreciate the feedback last week. I'm still thinking about that. But to me, it translated from being taskmaster to try and just show you that there's really certain ways to do this, and you have to maintain that. For me, it translated into, no, this is what is required of us. We have to be taskmasters of ourselves. The Behind the Woodshed is partly us bringing ourselves behind the woodshed and getting those principles that we were deprived or denied. And so that takes the work. That takes us getting a run up. So appreciate that. I just wanted to shout out to that comment. Again, markonthebeach@yahoo.com for any of those contributions. That's what I look for, those things. I don't get too many of them. In some regard, I don't expect a few in the regard of the knowledge that I try to bring, because I don't know that that's untrue. I don't think I've made mistakes in my interpretation. There's many that maybe could come to tell me those, but I'm still listening for those. More importantly, I'm looking for the guy that knows, or the woman that knows what I know, that knows maybe a little bit more, that tries to drag me down, because that's out there as well. In other words, don't get too uppity about what you think you know. There's someone that knows you better. I'm always wary about those people that are setting me up for a takedown. And that just makes me have to know my stuff even more. Again, the task mastery comes to us. We are doing this not to, but for ourselves. In our victimhood, it feels like it's to us, but this is what we are required to do, even though you say, you scuff your feet and kick the dirt and it clogs the dirt, and you say, I don't want to do this. Yeah, that's right. I don't either, but this is what's required if we keep what was provided for us and bring it beyond what they intended, actually. And so I wanted to also be maybe the taskmaster a bit. I went back through the chats that I can get when I stay connected up. I get the chat record. I don't respond directly. In fact, I can see some of the chats from the prior as I'm talking that you were writing. And I noticed one thing. I talked to you last week about Ron Steffen's discussion about real estate and land, and that you don't own it, you rent it, and that's real property. And I didn't see any response to my statement that in the United States we're different. and that it would be a patent you're looking for in the way of comparison. Nobody was really listening at the time, I guess, or was interested to realize that this is the distinction that I was told and see myself through Hernando de Soto. There's a distinction between United States of America law on land, soil, and Canadian. If in Canada, Canuckistan, I was surprised not to see, but the Queen owns everything. So that's what you're buying. You're buying an interest to be protected to the limit of that interest, but you do not own the soil in the exclusive possession against all the world context. That should tell you, Canuckistanians, what you're living in. This is the Queen's no small potatoes here. She's not just some figurehead honorarium. And your laws in soil are, I'm saying it in absolutes. I don't know. I've never really studied Canuckistanian law and land law, but what I have studied tells me the people cannot really own the land unless there's a letter patent attached. And this is the same law now, see? You have to have that letter patent. If you don't have a letter patent, you have real property, not soil, and not to the exclusion of the patentee, which would in this case for Canuckistan or United Kingdom, unless there's a patent behind it, you don't own the exclusive possession. So nobody really stepped up in a comment to say, hey, wait a minute, you're wrong, but Canada can't be held by the standard of the United States. That's it, and that's the point. But nobody said that. So not that I even see it during the time in reviewing the record of the chat. There was no integration with the use that I'm saying that you need to have, the integration with the information and using it and putting everything in its proper jurisdiction and utility. At that point, now Ron Steffen's finding that he was told and understands that there's no no soil you can own is absolutely proper up in Canuckistan. And everywhere else in the world except for the United States. Well, anywhere that in the United States where it hasn't been beaten down, the government hasn't beaten you down by some employee to say that you never did have that right because you were not smart enough to understand what the property was we were talking about and the constraint, the absolute prohibition upon encroachment by the grantor, which happens to be the government. Happens to be this fiction everybody wants to rail against. I'll embrace it if it means that fiction's held off by its own power that we gave even to the fiction and to do our bidding in the fictional sense because no one can do it. It's a tool, I keep suggesting to you. Embrace that part. And so we have a way to get at this, I think. Nobody as yet brought any I would have to say no one's brought any argument to me at all, but I'll just leave open the option. Maybe I forgot an email somewhere that. Anyway, so we have to step up, folks. We have to keep it. We have to be our own task. We have to have our own task mastery, which means we're doing tasking. We're doing something. I hate the word task group and all this kind of thing the government has now taken on. Again, our vocabulary is being used to somewhat circumvent us, except for when you make it private, it doesn't matter. You're going to do what you need to do, and that's going to be to keep what you thought was yours that some plunderers coming to try and take from you. But you know it that way, and you know all the objective basis, not these feely character sensing type things. No, the amenities of how you sense you think is going on. No, these are objective black and white. And this is the black and white that was supposed to be put on everybody that agreed to that societal structure. However you would conceive and characterize it. So, this is the distinctions. I'd like to see us working with the information I send over. I'm just still kind of surprised that last week was a low click rate for listening to the broadcast. I know it was a long, summer's on. I understand all that. But nonetheless, there's still time off. That all of a sudden a lot of listenership drops off just on what I'm thinking, that was nuts and bolts. That should be good for people. And I don't get any response either way, and then I don't get to the listeners and say, well, maybe not. Maybe no one's listened. Those that listened got it, but those that don't are now behind it. So I looked at the chat room and didn't see much reflection of this, and I won't call it an error, but it was the distinction I'm trying to make with you between the laws of the United States for property and how that sets up how we can identify the distinction between government, its limits, and where we start, and really how we become what they say we are, which is the power is in the people. It's in the power, folks. I've told you that before. But you don't keep it when you hand it over, give it up, agree with someone, go to consensus, allow a third-party interloper to come in and make a decision on your land, and don't call him a felon, given that you went to the law in your state to find that any color of authority that comes without title to officially interfere with you is a crime. That's a felony. It's not just any trespass now. You have the answers that fast. How fast? It just took me, 10 seconds to rattle that off. Where did I get that? Just from reading and working, looking at these little things and thinking about it. Now you have the benefit of that statement. You don't have to go search it. It took me years to come here, folks. So you don't have that burden on you. I will willingly come to tell you this stuff, to accelerate that, if you'll just take up that gauntlet. If I could bring it into the current Middle Ages terminology, the current Middle Ages I wrote about back in 1999 or so. So, again, I don't make these rules. This is just what we're up against. I've tried to be reasonable. Tried to talk a reason why it's like that, to try and get beyond someone who would tell, who I've seen before in the past, oh, you've never engaged, you don't know what you're talking about, this and that and the other thing, whatever. It's only your opinion. Well, I've been involved in it, so I know it's not my opinion. So that means that's their opinion, and they're just trying to find an excuse. That makes you the accessory to the crime against you. There's no excuse here. And that's not my being a taskmaster on you. That's just a reality. And if you don't step up, you don't have eventually. And now it brings me to another concept. And we're still, a few minutes in now, still haven't got to the tabs. Someone sent me an email, and thank you very much if you're listening, or if you will listen, about a potential comment from the Federal Register bill or something that has to be commented to about land withdrawal. And I wanted to know if we knew about it. Well, I don't remember. There's so much going on right now that I don't know if we've actually commented to it before. But let me throw out something that I haven't even had a chance to go back and look and see if we have commented to it. There's number one, we have to comment to it. Everybody does. All these actions are being done in your name without your input, and it's agreed that you've consented by consensus to these thefts. That the listener that sent that notice it's kind of like the straw that's breaking the camel's back. I have to ask you all, especially you miners that are probably not listening to me or won't because you're out working like you should be. No judgment there. I'm glad that you would be working, and you know the law enough to be there to counter to everybody else that's not and saying that you don't know what's going on, because we have a lot of that too. Let me put it this way, folks. As I just told you, if you don't fight to keep what you have, it'll be taken. All the miners and even ranchers and anybody who's in raw materials production right now, I'm talking to all of y'all, or those that may be interested or are interested in where you get the stuff of your life. I need help. I need someone to research this bill that's coming, or this action. It's an administrative action to withdraw more land. I need to have some specific history done. I don't have the time. This is going to pass by us because I am done. I just don't have any more extra time to go do the footwork in order to make the comment that it's so easy to make, actually, once you see it's not that hard. I just have to have the facts verified. That for all y'all that are raw materials producers, if you don't engage with what I'm saying, and you don't, even if you don't think you can or don't understand it, maybe I'm not the guy to talk with you. I have other people that might be able to talk with you. That I need your help. I need you to get engaged. I need at least basic research done that can allow us to make the paperwork, to put in a comment, to give us the standing to stop some of this stuff in the future. We're at that time, folks. If I'm going to put it this way, all the miners that are working that won't be listening to me, and I know, and I'm not talking in judgment. I'm saying I'm glad you're working, but right now we're at the time. This may be your last year to go in those areas. Because there's lots of areas being withdrawn right now, or trying to. They're actually in the works, and that's what we're being the big stick in the spokes. Pretty soon you're not going to fight to keep, and they're going to take, and you won't be able to get back out there because you didn't come today to help us put the record in to allow yourself to go fight. I didn't make that rules. I don't do that setup, but that's the way it works, and that's how it works, and we have to engage that. Even though I know it's a felony crime against us to take us away from our granted right. We still have to fight the battle because the enemy is it's a target-rich environment. We're infiltrated and surrounded, and you better start understanding the truth of that. And you know it's real easy to take out what occupies us. That's the other thing. Numbers will certainly help this. With a few handful of people I work with, we've been able to stalemate about everything so far. We just don't have enough to push it over. So I guess this is my plea if I need to. I did it last Friday. It was Southwest Oregon Mining Association. I asked then, I said, we need help. Those of you that are miners, you better consider, you got a balance to make here. I know it's time to go to work. I know the water, well, maybe as soon as the water stops for you all, maybe it's time to get back. Maybe it'll be a month, 2 months before you can get back. But when you have nothing more to do because you got no water to run your process, I'm asking for your help. By then it'll be too late for this project, but we need people to start helping preserve action against agencies that are stealing the land from us. So, I asked last Friday, I need help. I say I need help because I'll make the comment. We've already got a list of comments. I'll just, if what I understand is going to be the future, what you're going to find is what is, when you produce it, I've got the comment for it already. That's how automatic this seems to be. But we need the bodies. And we need it. I'm saying for what we do, this is everywhere, folks. I can just tell you, there's no place you can't go locally that won't have this very same imposition, that the method of response that I've seen to be doing and that works, that shuts all this down, works everywhere. I'm pausing again. I want you to think about that. So far, it works everywhere. Do you understand what I just told you about how easy it is to defeat at least the momentum and the action and the fulfillment of what these enemies within the gate are trying to do to us? Do I have the only answer? That absolutely not. But I have one. When the people do that I'm working with, when we do it the way we're supposed to do it, it just shuts things down. In fact, I just have to let you know the way the process works. These consensus-based groups, these advisory committees that are in your counties, they need to be disbanded. They are the usurpation inside the county that looks under the counties. It looks like it's under the county's name, and it's actually a federal agency advisory group, to the discretion, the advice of which is to the discretion of your agent. You have to get rid of those councils. We just did that. We helped another county from where we are to help get rid of theirs. You should have heard the nonsense coming out of the attorneys. You should have heard the noise coming from the people that were sitting in the cart with the reins in their fingers, that were actually the usurpers. You could sure to howl about that. So this you can do, folks. This is not that hard. It takes a couple of steps. You have to overcome a couple things, but it's all in law, black and white. It's copy and paste almost. In fact, everything that's substantial is copy and paste. It's before us. This is not that hard, and it is in the law. Not legal. It may be looking like legal, but it's law because it attaches to the soil. The law of the land is no joke in this regard. I don't use it in the way I've told you before, that Article 6 in the United States Constitution, the federal Constitution, was a servitude. The law of the land included the servitude there. Once it goes to grant, the law of the land is the soil, and it combats completely. It's a complete response, a complete defense, a complete offense against anyone thereafter trying to transgress that grant. In fact, it puts the burden on the government itself to protect its own grant. This is a completely different status that you take on. Something that people in Canuckistan or anywhere else really can't take on that way. They address it in a slightly different way. But it's addressable nonetheless. It's just addressed a little bit different. So I've asked you, we need help. I need some research done. It's not that hard. I'll give you some links. You just got to track down, confirm a couple things. I'll give you all the direction. I just don't have time to do it. I'm really, that's the straw that breaks the camel's back for me. My problem is I'm seeing a lot of miners that'll argue with me and say I don't know what I'm talking about, or maybe I'm not right or whatever, and they'll do all the wrong things. The miners that listen to me are all working, folks. I can just tell you. All the ones that aren't working are complaining to the miners that are working that they're working. How pathetic are we? The miners that I know are working. They got a smile on their face. They know the threat on them with the government oppressor, but they got that handled as well to the limit that their knowledge will allow them. And it's that simple to know. Anybody comes with a lesser title than you to the land, you nail them. It's that fast. And so this is what's going on. The agencies are not doing what they're supposed to do. I can show you how to quickly go right in the statute and show how if they didn't do something, it's what they're doing is a crime. That's as quick as the comment ends up being. You can have hands-on here. So I know it might be foreign information. It may not be completely what you're interested in, but I can give you some of the seeds of how you go about destroying these enemies within the gates. Anywhere. Now, it's confined to properties. It's confined to those things we can prove. It's not an opinion. And so I can't say it's everywhere in the context of every subject matter, but you listen to me every Sunday. You hear how far I can bring this. These basic principles are proven to be self-evident basic principles because they're universally applicable in most all subject matters. I'm pausing again. I want you to think. I want you to think about this. I want you to think with the gray matter, not work with gray areas that the government will bring to you. That's the first sign that they're trying to evade the law. I told you that we got that written down. I got it written down. I didn't write it down. The sheriff wrote it down. That's his first response after he found out he can't respond. Well, you're dealing with a gray area. And I come back, writing back with a response and saying, you don't have an authority to impose a gray area. And then I stated the law that said there was no gray area, and so he's in error twice. But he has a fiduciary duty to uphold the law. So the second one is a constitutional crime, what he's done. How fast is that? Just how many? 10 seconds was that to ramble that off? So pausing again. I guess I'm kind of pausing. For me, I just said everything I needed to say. If we would just get 100% of the people to step up, this thing is done. That's how close we are. That's how excited it kind of gets in one regard. But having to carry a lot of the load, and I don't care. I mean, I don't mind because it teaches me a lot too. But it's gone beyond what I can carry. I'll be dropping sticks. In fact, we are dropping sticks. I've been dropping sticks and kind of ignoring it because no one's getting hurt. As long as no one's getting hurt, I guess I can let that one stick drop that we started but never continued. We know it's in the trail. We can go back and get it. Like our FBI claim, right? The counterclaim. I've told you about that. We need to go back after that. That's dropped. It's a year old. That's kind of way old, but it's still current because I've tied it to a tampering with a witness issue that never stops. See, folks, it's right there in the law to pick up all this stuff, and once the crime is done, it never goes away. And we have the ability to use it against those that profess themselves to be your ruler by rules. And you say, no, I don't live under your new age anarchy. I live by the black and white. It says right here on this paper, I have exclusive possession and enjoyment. You bugger off. For all you Brits. So I'm way off the tabs again, aren't I? Maybe no clicks this week. I can only tell you as my mind's going and thinking about what I'm saying, you are hearing a big deal on how to address all of this. All I need to do, folks, in this is just understand your subject matter, and I just bring the very same principles in the context. I conform the principles to your subject matter in almost all cases. They're applicable. Now, where they might not be would be things like contracts in employment. But we still apply a contract concept there, don't we? And there's a property interest in that, isn't there? And these are all fictions. These are tools that we create for ourselves to be able to understand this. Otherwise, it's your opinion against mine, and then it's whether or not my club is bigger. My club is bigger, and I wield it better than you. In other words, I've been up against bigger clubs, but still bested them, if you will, when I was in the SCA. I learned how to do that. I wasn't the biggest guy on the field. I wasn't the baddest guys on the field. I wasn't actually the most capable, but I had developed techniques that most styles that I fought against could not best me, and I could best them. And sometimes all I could do was hold off their best, and that's sometimes enough. And so, because then if you're out there, you're not going to die. You're just going to hold them off. You're at least not dead. You live another day if you can get away. which you hopefully work yourself up. But more importantly, there's more people that watch the problem happening if this is now brought into a real context, and maybe more people will come to stop the crime against you, that you were just barely good at, you were just enough to keep them at bay, but not enough to stop it. The kind of things we see in video at other places, like that place in Iraq when the cops shot the cafe latte tea drinker. The people jumped all over that cop and arrested him. We're going to kill him until the other cops actually showed up to save him. The guy in the video I saw, the father saved his family by throwing a carpet. The apartment's on fire. He throws a carpet to the street below and yells for help, says stretch the carpet, and then I think his wife, by the story, throws out their little few-month-old baby, and then their 3-year-old daughter go flying out of the window down, and giving it up to the people below who were there to help them, folks. Showed up immediately to help somebody, another one of their own, and save the kids. Then the wife comes flying out of the window 5 stories up, have to clear a shed or something down below by 10 feet or so. She goes flying out. They catch her. And then he has to jump 5 stories, and he jumps. They don't quite have a handle on it, so he gets a broken back. But he does live, and he saved his family with the help of his people around him in his own town. So this is how we do that. The evidence is all around us. We don't have to accept this nonsense. So I'm asking for some help. If someone can do some basic checking of all it'll be is I'll send you a couple links. You can learn how to do this. I'll send you to the site. I want you to read this, that, and the other. Tell me what you find. Contact these by email. See what you get. I need it done in a few days, folks. If I just on that basis, that slim basis, I'll write a comment to give a minor standing, actually give anybody who would be interfered with that withdrawal a standing, to go back and stop it by an injunction. Will you do it? I don't know. But let's punch our ticket to get there at least, folks. Let's get ourselves in the game. Otherwise, we are the merry band of Cricketeers. So I talk to you and telling you that we live in a military state, military world, driven by the military executioners. I've shown you a couple ways to see that for yourself, if you'll understand what you're being told is exactly what it says. In other words, martial law is declared by the deed, folks, by what you see, what they show you. And when you find that the Liber Code tells you these things, you learn the clues. They can do anything they want to keep the security of that occupation out of your control, in fact, you won't be able to control that. You have to out them. You have to throw them off. They don't want you to see it. They have every power to cause the illusion. It's all there, folks. I didn't need to know that there was a law against propaganda in the United States that was lifted to know there was propaganda in the United States, because the government military consequence that we live under has every right to lie to you for its security. There's no opinion on all this. I don't have to waste lots of time discussing it. It's the fact. And so little stories come up. They call it the news. People reporting, independent so-called reporting, alternative news reporting, folks behind which we're beyond the news. We're looking at everybody's collective consciousness discussing the same thing and not discussing the right thing that I tried to bring to you, clicking the tabs. Here's another little bitty evidence. You can disagree with me. You can think I'm kind of out there. You can believe me. You can agree to it and say, okay, we know that's it, and then sit comfortably in your chair. But once you find out if you disagree with me, there's not much I can do if you won't go research the facts of what I just said to inform yourself. If you agree with me and you don't act to throw off the occupier, you're just the accessory to the crime against you. And so we don't have any wiggle room on this. There is no gray area, actually. But here's another evidence. This is why police beat people. 2 police academies caught on video teaching excessive violence. No one but 2 police training academies have now been suspended. Not one, but 2 police training academies have now been suspended for what appears, getting soft, to be teaching the use of excessive force as the norm captured on video. Okay, 2. But let me go down to the punchline. Because again, I don't need to read this stuff. It's all here to show us, if we just understand it's telling us a truth. And this article's a lot soft, because to me it's not a question. It's not appearing. It is what it's telling you. And then they go soft again, but it is what they're telling us. Remember I pointed out, they said not 1 but 2. No, it's all of them. And actually it's all of them. And here's the phrase, the paragraph all the way through, down near the bottom, I think of the article. Though the vast majority of police training in the United States involves stress-based paramilitary boot camp style indoctrination, multiple studies have proven that these warrior techniques ineffective in policing. So there's an admission here that there's a majority, and I'd say the vast majority, it says here, I think there's only a couple that don't, vast majority of so-called police training is military. You're not paramilitary. You're not para-boot camp. This is military training, warrior techniques against the populace, admitted here. If you don't know that you're under a military consequence in this country, United States of America, and really globally, I don't know what to tell you. I don't know how to pull those blinders off you. You have to see this. You have to do the work it takes to see it. Or you are obligated, because the way I think about this, if I see this and I need to throw it off, because under international law, we're an occupied people, if not under conquest at this point. I'm duty bound to throw this off somehow, find out what the Achilles heel is and attack that, because that's all I got. I'm reduced to guerrilla human warfare, if I can put it that way. Paramilitary, folks. These are use of force techniques and military standards. They're ineffective in policing. In other words, they're not police, actually. But they're being trained to be extra police, aren't they? And so, just in that one sentence, we see they know it doesn't work and they continue it, and the vast majority do this military training. If you haven't seen, all these pieces of equipment that are all military, and the military handed over to the local military all their so-called used equipment. You're just watching the expansion of the territory of the military consequence into your land, Battlefield America. They were not joking. And I heard, and here we had the merry band of Cricketeers. So again, I'm a little exasperated. Evidence is everywhere. We need to really get to work. And I've just been looking around, and if they admitted it was Battlefield America, I can take that. I don't need the grain of salt no more. I'll just take it for the fact. And we have to really rethink this battle. How are we going to approach it? In the meantime, I've been working on my own, because I've never been other than, once I broke myself away from the herd mentalities that were out there, and there was many of them, I was able to start always see that we were in that military consequence. In fact, I don't want to make the claim for it, but I'll just tell you how early on, and probably singularly, I've brought it on. I don't know that I think I may have been the first to actually explain the Liber Code the way I've done to explain to you what you live under. Up until then, it hadn't been put together, and in fact, a couple of very good researchers tried to tear into all that, and they had to come to the same agreement after I exposed that to them. And how did I start to do that, folks? When most people would remember that have listened to me, I started to show you through your civil rights. Title 42, Section 1981. when you see this thing, you see these laws, so-called, these things. These are just orders from the general of your place in this thing that they've created for you, that you didn't keep for yourself otherwise. And so, to me, this is more evidence confirming, just bringing into conformity what's going on. In other words, you take again these things they hand us. I mean, they copy and paste, folks. You give you a uniform standard to go by. Go ahead and copy and paste it and conform your cause to that statement they understand they violated. Don't make up your own stuff. It's so easy, actually. If I just did this again. We talk about the Model Business Corporation Act. Okay, so in a paper, I add another section to the criminal complaint, and I put the standard that is the violation I find in the Model Business Corporation Act in the criminal complaint. I don't write that. I copy and paste it, and then I conform the uniform parts to my specific condition. I don't reinvent the wheel. This is the language of the occupier. And that really is kind of cool. Now, there is a thought. You really have to sit down and think, how do you conform in the context that they've created it, what your cause is, foreign to that. But I don't have to go look for the words. Oh yeah, you have to do some inversion. If they talk about knowledge, you have to write the word unknowing, the reliance of not knowing. You have to say they don't have. You have to reverse these logics that they have. Yeah, you have to put some thought to that. But the standard form of their violation, what they shall do and what you found they failed to shall do, is a criminal complaint in the verbiage that they've created for us. Why would you say anything else, actually? Because you want to impress, your ego wants to impress people? And so it's right here for us to do. Does that mean I copy and paste everything? Absolutely not. In fact, we're having to discuss this. That you can explain a condition does not mean it is enough to make a complaint for a law case or a remedy. Because you know the totality, this is what I tell you, the doing is a whole lot different than the knowing. Because you can explain, let's take it out of esoteric foundationless ideas. I did the research a long time ago to find out that the federal agency rules don't apply in a particular instance from the Forest Service through to the miner. They do not apply. I found out that they repealed a code from which all the rules attached. It takes I finally refined that study to one paragraph. Eventually, a few years later, I had someone, I said, I want you to retrace this path, and I want you to prove out whether it's right or wrong for sure as a second opinion. They did that because they wanted to know too. They were amazed to see the rules cannot be applied. I told them the rules don't apply outright. And they did the study, and they came back and they found exactly what I had found, that they confirmed what I had done was correct. And in a paragraph, you can show how those rules are not applicable. That you can explain that is not sufficient for purposes of writing a claim or complaint for a remedy. And people think it is. And so, there's an application that has to be understood. How do you get at the fact you can see around you that you're actually living underneath a military consequence is an interesting observation, first of all, and pretty devastating in another. But then if you say, listen, I'm not going to let these people steal my land, steal my way of life, now you're going to start to get a little more serious. Whether or not you have all the training. Self-preservation will say, I better have to do this a whole lot smarter than the next lemming. I admitted I was part of the lemming's leap for a while. Then I developed a parachute. I learned how to make a parachute as I found myself going over the cliff, going to suffer the hyperbolic determinism of the lemming's leap. And just in time, I make my parachute opens and I got to make a soft landing, but I was still at the bottom down there floating. And I had to then figure out how to swim back to shore, get myself off the water, get onto the land, and then crawl back up. Yeah, you have to do all that, but once you do all that work, it's now knowledge. Once you've had to do it, you have a wisdom about that knowledge being applied. As I suggest to you, once you get the foundation principles, not all these tangential ideas, but principles, you use the principles. You don't talk about them. You just start using them. Back to nuts and bolts. Maybe I won't get clicks, but that's okay. A few of you will, and I do. You can't believe how much I appreciate those that you do and continue to work hard. So here we have more evidence that vast majority of the police training is actually military training, and that military training is not conducive to policing. And I say this in the context of making peace officers. They are making warriors. Another evidence. So I guess we can move on. But bringing up the idea in the older news we've been talking about, trying to bring this along to show you it's real, folks. It costs $150 to buy a dozen eggs in Venezuela right now. The military consequence is global. They need the funds to do this, and they take it away from you. And who is that? We're talking some questions about who this is. Give them all these names. Everyone, the chat room will fly up. Oh, it's the Rothschilds. It doesn't matter, really. There's some certain players in the world. That's all you really have to focus on. Not to target. I mean, if you can. I don't know about international targeting, how to take them out that way, or institutionally. I don't know how about doing that. But part of this more is just not engaging, or learning not to engage, or identifying the engagement so that you know who the players are. But this little report here, right in the first line, gives us at least one of the places that are main players in the world in the war against you. The financial war against you. Where did I get that? I've been telling you forever, Title 50 of the United States Code, that's your military code, and they underpin that whole thing with a fiscal consequence under Title 12. Look at the appendix. And it stems from the Trading with the Enemies Act, all in commerce as well. It's all why you're all treated and presumed in commerce. There's a war going on in commerce and the control of it. So this is down to the monetary or fiscal policies. You have to go to those institutions that have been created. I told you last week, I mentioned the same thing. It's over and over here, folks. But this is where they go. They hit you in your necessities. Are you really prepared for this, folks? Now, I still believe it's going to be a little softer for Americans. They can't rile us. They got to come in and slowly take this away from you. They now got their universal health care. They snuck that in on you if you don't think that's part of it. Next is coming this universal payment. You get to not work now. You don't think that's a noose around your neck. It's like a drug. Here, little boy. Here, little girl. I got something for you. Well, I invest in you. I invest in you a $10 bag of something, and you use it. Next thing is, boy, can I have more? Well, yeah, but it's going to cost you. Now, doesn't anybody see this trick? And I say prostitution. You want to twist all the words around and make it all to the beginning of time? What was this? The second oldest profession is politics. Many-sided many-faced parasites. It costs $150 to buy a dozen eggs in Venezuela. The very first paragraph starts out, the International Monetary Fund has predicted the inflation in Venezuela will hit 720% this year. You think, folks, if they predicted it and they're involved with the financial and monetary policy of Venezuela, do you think they can predict that the people are going to suffer? Do you think that's within their power? You think we also know who done it here? I keep asking. I'll ask again. Do I need to read more, actually? What did I mention last week? International Monetary Fund, World Bank, Development Bank, so-called. BRICS is only a development bank. The what do we call the directors of which partially are from the World Bank. Then you got the International Bank of Settlements that was set up by the Allies during Brent Woods or something. I don't know. I get lost. It doesn't matter to me. It's all there. It's what I see. These names and they keep coming up. Aren't people? Aren't families? They are the instruments of destruction that we continue to allow. You get rid of those. It doesn't matter about those families, does it? They might try something else, but if we're aware and we understand the consequence, it may not happen again. So are you prepared that your money, it costs $150 for a dozen of eggs? And this is in a place you thought everyone had a chicken, folks. A place I would have thought chickens were running rampant has no eggs, unless you want to pay $150. Tells you how concentrated the population now has been pushed to urbanization, the urbanites, and how they've been told in such a short amount of generations, how they've been shown not to be able to provide for themselves, is the reflection in the mirror that the rest of the world is required to see. I talked to you last week about the production capacity of man. That there should be no concept of being for want. We should have complete abundance. I'm not talking about the New Age abundance. I'm talking about abundance. There should be no want. And here we have $150 dozen eggs. You'll read the broadcaster has, I don't want to read it. You'll see the dynamic. Go read the broadcaster. When I get the link eventually after the broadcast, you'll see how it gets done. Now, you would think in a place that should have had at least a chicken in every pot and about 20 in the yard, that there wouldn't be a shortage of eggs that you pay $150. So, whatever you thought about Venezuela and how rural and backwoods it was not that backwoods that it escaped because it was non-dependent enough from the system of the world. That its people are hurt, and now they're hungry, and now they're going to attack each other. Is that what you want to do, folks? Is that what you're watching here? Is that what you want to do? Are you setting up for different? I hear Cricketeers, so I don't know, folks. I see we're going down the same path. And I don't mean just the United States. I'm talking everywhere. But abundance is here, folks. And yet they give us austerity. Another so-called conundrum. Why don't we sit back and say, wait a minute. What doesn't make sense about I told you a long time ago, when it stopped making sense, you're on the point. You got to find out the cause of the point of what's stop making sense. You don't have to go further. Just look for what made the cause that makes things stop making sense, and you'll find the culprit. But abundance is within our power, the power of the people, and we deny it to ourselves. Instead, allow these institutions, whether they go from Congress to the International Monetary, whether the Bank of Settle, all that stuff, these people to get together in their little these little conspiracies against people, and they get their way. The future we want is their way. Agenda 2030. I keep talking to people wondering about this migration. Yeah, it's part of the plan. I read it. This is not a question, folks. You don't have to wonder where this came from. It's in the plan. But so there's not a need for this. There's a need for. We have abundance that's available if those that are not the psychopaths in the world would just step out the way, or we would get them out the way. So I'm like I'm right before. I don't know if you've ever surfed. I've never really got to surfing. I did body surfing. I was really good at body surfing. I had so much fun doing that for a long time. It's kind of cool. If those of you that might have done that, even surfing, I suppose, there's a wave coming and you got to get your speed up, and you got to go what they call catch the wave. Well, that's behind the woodshed. I feel like that there's so much going on. I can only address so much, and that's why I get a little frustrated not being able to get to all the tabs, because the broadcast is what I bring out is just doing that all the time on lots and lots of places. The wave is right here. It's just going to catch. We're just having to catch it. So last week I told you, or the week before, it was the Dubai, or the week before was Dubai deal. I think last week was the abundance of us being able to produce for ourselves, the power that we need, which is one of the leashes around our neck. That why don't we have the Dubai deal? I said, well, if the United States has American exceptionalism, why don't we get better than a Dubai deal? Why don't you give me the power? What have I told you a long time ago? Why don't you also give me the car? And now we have the technology really in Tesla, Tesla Motor Works, notwithstanding the fact that their cars are driving themselves into other cars now, because the monkeys behind the seat don't understand when you tap the gear shift twice, it goes into automatic park mode. And then Tesla wasn't smart enough to say, wait a minute, there's a car in front of me. Even if I'm in automatic park mode, I need to stop when my hood's underneath a truck. But getting back to the electric cars, you want to get back into control and power. What did I say about all the power that we could have available to us? I referenced it to the amount of production the United States would be buying, because Dubai could only get it for 3 cents a kilowatt under its 800 megawatt purchase contract. bid contract, and I said the United States could dwarf that and we get it for zero. I said that, right? A podunk country, third world, backwoods, banana republic like Chile is already doing that, folks. Chile is producing so much power, it's giving it away for free. Let's move on. If you don't think this austerity and all this nonsense and the production, the question, the regulation and all this is a bunch of nonsense, that story should wake you up. Let me move on. Really, I'm going to move on. Judge says suspect has a right to show you the insanity of why we are in this so-called conundrum. We think these judges make decisions that are well-versed, Koch-ash level, no, not Koch-ash, but Koch level, Sir Koch level thought about law, which was also everyone looking for their favor before the crown so they didn't get their head lopped off. But at any rate, judge says suspect has the right to review code that the FBI has the right to keep secret. What a conundrum, isn't it? The judge says that the suspect, well, he's not a defendant, he's not the accused, he's a suspect, has the right to review the code that the FBI has the right to keep secret. How do you resolve that, folks? What did this judge do? What a brilliant judge to find this conundrum that he just can't resolve. United States federal judge in Tacoma, and I'm sure he's a USDC court judge, he's a territorial court judge, he's not competent in Article 3 at all, and he's probably not competent in his commission at all. But this so-called federal judge in Tacoma, Washington, has put himself in a catch-22. This article says so-called, I say, ruling a man charged with possessing child pornography has the right to review the malware source code while also acknowledging that the government has the right to keep it secret. Isn't that fascinating what these people do? But do you have the answer already, folks? Do you have the answer? Do you understand the constitutional requirements on the government so well that you'd know what the answer is before we get here? That this so-called this judge bar member hasn't quite figured out the answer to the conundrum he's created. If this is the truth, what's the answer to this case? That if the defendant, so-called the accused, has the right under discovery for the information on how the malware code was created and what it is, that the FBI can, for whatever reason, they can keep it. What's the answer already? All you all should have it in you. If you don't, I'm disappointed, but this is not even a hard thing to go that now you see how it's being done to you. The Bar Association is part and parcel to your problem. Again, this is not my opinion. I'm just not beating about the heads and shoulders the judiciary. We have the proof, folks. Go look on the internet. It's Jefferson Mining District versus Kitzhaber 2013. Look very carefully at the 10 defendants and understand they didn't answer that injunction. And that injunction was to stop the destruction of the Republic form representative government by the methods they used to make that destruction. The bar is involved. Partly why it's a monopoly, and partly why whenever you go somewhere, you get the answer is, you're going to have to call a lawyer and get legal advice. It's a monopoly destruction. So this judge says, the suspect, the defendant, has the right to the information, but the government has the right to withhold it. So let me read a little bit more, but I'm going to give you some time as I talk to come up with the answer. I'm sure some of you have it. Well, I'm hoping you're interested enough to have it. What do I know? The resolution of defendant's third motion to compel discovery places this matter in an unusual position, says the judge. The defendant has the right to review the full NIT code, but the government does not have to produce it. So says Robert Bryan, the judge. Thus, there's a logical statement here, thus, we reach the question of sanctions. This is very important because this is now, the motion to compel was also based on sanctions for under Rule 26, if I remember correctly, or 27. For the failure to produce under the necessity of the right to hear, to have, the sanctions. So the judge is responding to sanctions. So he knows there's a penalty for this. So you should already, in some regard, have the answer. But let's go see. He's talking sanctions. So the answer would be some action that is determinative in the case. What should be done about it when, under these facts, the defense has a justifiable need for information in the hands of the government, but the government has a justifiable right not to turn the information over to the defense? Now, I'm not saying this judge is dumb. I think he's seeing some pretty interesting things. What I'm telling you is that he's making an issue where a continuance, a question, a conundrum where there isn't any right there. A need trumps any right. I'll tell you that. So listen, don't disregard that. But it was a justifiable one, the need of the defendant. So what's the question about sanctions? That never gets answered. But let me just jump to the chase. I mean, you don't want to hear it from me? Let's go listen to what a law professor might have to say about it. Ahmed Ghapoor, yeah, you heard right, a law professor at the University of California, Hastings, came to a similar conclusion. Quote, "The judge has already ruled that the source code is material to the defense, and the government has not made a sufficient showing that access to the source code cannot be used by the defense to mount a challenge." What does that mean? That means, let's go to the Constitution, where do the burdens lie? What's the burden of the government to the need of the defendant, but production of the evidence against him? The failure of which does what to the charges that are brought by the government? But brings them subject to dismissal, doesn't it? If the government chooses to withhold a required need in a criminal case, then the government has made the decision to forfeit the case and the charges. If they believe that the secret of the source code is more important than convicting or attempting to convict a purported child pornography possessor, then the Constitution says that the government forfeits its charges. And this case should have right there been dismissed. But this usurper, this reflexive law agent, makes a conundrum. What's the point of sanctions? He never says. He's going to continue this, which is a violation to that accused, that defendant, so-called. I suppose he is a defendant. He probably didn't make any jurisdictional challenges before plea. So what was the answer, to make it nice and clear? If the government's going to retain the information that's a need of the defendants for the defense under the Constitution, the charges should be immediately dismissed. When you then say, then what do you mean you got to go to the court to get justice? I've told you, no, you don't. You got to eliminate the courts. The courts are the problem. And I developed, in the case that I cited to you before, Jefferson Mining District versus Kitzhaber 2013, I worked out how that would work for us, and I've now translated the principles over to criminal charges. So I know they're now translatable. Is there justice done? No, because these judges are doing reflexive conditioning over the future security of the military they are seeing. Remember, these are military tribunals, if you haven't understood it. They can look civil. Go read Libra Code. They'll tell you all about it. You cannot look at a court today and not know whether or not there's a military oversight behind it. You can't do it. You'll see that right in the Libra Code. At that point, then I kind of backed off and said, I can't tell you what these courts are. I'm just going to have to go on how they function. Why? Because Libra Code says you know them by their deeds. Now, long before that, I had figured out the thread between jurisdictions. There's a common thread between all jurisdictions. You need to research enough to find it. In other words, when you hear about the hats the judge can put on now, because they blended equity and admiralty together in the federal side, and they come under, you find out international, they come under, all the code comes under penal statutes under admiralty. They can run between common law to admiralty to equity, which is in the law of the Constitution, exclusive to the federal courts as well. They can run all through these things. Well, there's threads. They're only altered by term, but they're the same functions between jurisdictions. Now, you can listen if you know that. You can watch the judge, by their terminology, put the different hats on. And I've told you this before. If you're listening for that in a discussion, if you happen to be unfortunate enough to find yourself before them, you can track what they're talking. You can go from jurisdiction to jurisdiction. They'll move you back and forth, and then you watch the look on their face. And I can only tell you that because I've done it a couple times. They watch. They can see. They know what when you track them, and then you listen how the prosecutor or the attorney on the other side doesn't know what the hell you're talking about. And now you are in dialogue with the judge. You've now developed that special language. You don't say much, but I mean you're tracking and you're responding the proper way within a jurisdiction. You're not espousing all your knowledge that he just done that. You're just responding in that way. It's kind of a trip. The point is that there's a moving target out there. You have to start to become more cognizant of it. The things I bring you, try to anticipate avoiding that by either making an administrative record that it keeps it out of the hands, or you now walk in and we know now a lot more substantively than I've heard anybody else how to go directly at the incompetence of the establishment of the courts, and then the incompetence, not the incompetency, although there might be some of that by drug and alcohol use, but the incompetence of the officers. We now have that pretty well laid out, pretty quick to figure that out. That way beyond what I hear anybody else doing, that I'm trying to bring to you, pointing out the facts, not my opinion, but the experience and the action, the direct action that you can find around, that allows you to start engaging these people as they attack you. I've heard someone say, well, not many times, this is legalisms, we will avoid this as much as we can. We don't normally get involved. Well, that's true, but that's because you somehow have been lucky, or you run away, or you're invasion of a thing that's wrong. Because when you look around and decide there's a thing that's wrong that you need to arrest, you're going to be engaging these people. Why? Because it's a target-rich environment. We're invaded. And this is globally, actually. I'm kind of U.S.-centric in a way, but not so. Again, international law kind of brings the other thread right through all of this stuff. It's pretty fascinating. So this judge comes up and says, oh, well, you have the right to the information, but the government, with its stated need, has the right to keep it from you. Under the Constitution, the burden is on the government, folks. And if they're not going to provide the evidence that the Constitution is for your defense, they forfeit the case. Why this judge didn't say that, I don't know. He might say it now, who knows. But how fast? I mean, I talk a whole lot longer than I needed to get to the point. But I want to do a little bit of setup. You want to start thinking you know the Constitution and how to do it? This is how you apply it real quick. So if you're involved in that condition, and this is pretty straightforward between a judge and a case with a defendant, you got this attorney that's probably racking you over the coals, not doing what he's supposed to do. But anyway, that's probably why it's going to continue. See, cha-ching is made by next motion, not by resolving the case. It's like the medical profession doesn't make money when they cure you. It's all the same method here of destruction, of parasite profiteering. They're all privateers. They've been given their letter patent by your consent because you don't step up. So that's pretty simple. Why it's not a decision in the court to throw the case out, I don't know. It means that you're not in the world you were told you're in, that's for sure. And I've tried to find in my studies, well, what is that? If this is the case, where do we live relating to a law condition or some kind of a characterization? Where is that place? It's the thing I ask you to do. Why? Because I've done I've done it. I do it almost all the time. Okay, what am I dealing with here is the same question. That's how you out the non-constitutional interloper that we know is talking like through sustainable development. You know them by their words. It's pretty simple. These people are not that chameleon-like. They're only chameleon-like when they figure out what your objection is to what they do. Then they kind of do the cover-up, like the cat turd that they are. I'm going to make myself look more like Kitty Roca. He's identified I'm a cat turd. I want to make it look more like I'm an almond roca here by covering myself over a little bit more. But that's only after your interjection. So what you got to remember is not to interject your opposition more than their criminality up front. Now they can't defend against that. If you think a comment you make before the agency with your gripe about how it's going down versus is going to get any air that's going to work, you're mistaken. Your opinion is irrelevant. The law they failed to comply with, that's not. And so that's where we target everything we do. Like I say, I may do a Hail Mary pass with some basic information, and because they universally will fail to do the things they need to do, that Hail Mary pass is a touchdown. How simple is that, folks? I know maybe you don't understand what I'm talking about. Maybe that's the problem here, but how simple is that? You go to the objective basis, find the failure, find the duty that they had to follow the objective basis, which was an imperative, no discretion, and you have them. That fast. It's when they get it into these gray areas or things inside a private condition that is more problematic. And that's what they did to all of us. They bring us into like the civil rights. They bring you all in subject to exaction and extortion of any kind, and that's internal, private to that federal system. You're now part and parcel of it. You have no separateness. You're treated and presumed as a part. You have no non-dependent condition. Land disposal allows that line to be drawn where there is an independent. That's not anywhere else in the world, but unless anywhere else in the world you find a land patent you have that states that. Where the United States of America is the last example to people as to how this works, to keep separate and empowered, keep the people in power. And it's done, in my estimation, through this in the obligations and duties of the government to you through your land. So when you get in that system, what happens? You start learning certain things. You start realizing the threat to you. And when the system starts to eat on you, and they've been eating on the people who have been presumed to be part and parcel to the system as subject, as citizen subject, as partner, as a stakeholder in a case that you don't even have title. See, if you look at it that way, you're just another corporation to them. You've got no title to nothing. We can go through on and on. I can throw you any category up. Throw up any category. I'll show you how it sits there, relating to what you're seeing in the world. That doesn't bother me. Okay, if we want to go there, that's fine. I'll do anything. You set it up. I'll show you how it's either not supposed to work that way, or how you got yourself there and how to separate yourself from it. And as I said that, the thought just flashed in my mind. I think I heard Ron Steffen talking about getting rid of your agreements. Just a more technical point, you rescind the signature. You're looking to rescind the signature. It's very simple. You go look for rescission. Go look at the 3 to 5 elements, I think it's 4 to 5 elements that allow for a rescission of the signature on a document. And if you conform you can conform the elements of your need to those reasons, one being a mistake. You state that reason for the rescission of the signature on the document, and that voids that document. Is that my opinion? No, we do it all the time, and it works. It's the fact of going, if you want to know, those of you that were reading UCC, you can go find the evidence of that yourself there. Don't say this is UCC. It's just what the UCC has done over these things that they're putting under UCC. Why reinvent the wheel? It's the thing they recognize. That's how you invalidate a paper. It's get rid of the signature on it. So just wanted to point that out. I appreciate that Ron made that comment. This isn't that hard, folks. I mean, this is just us deciding to reconstruct our existence and relationship to those fictions that are out there and produce the distinction. But I guess it's technical here. Rescission of the signature shows you how powerful the signature on a document is. How do I know that? Just to give you a basis for so we're talking about. There's permits that miners used to get, or they still get them, but when they find out that they're the wrong permit, they weren't meant for them, and they have one accidentally, they mistakenly applied for the permit that's not applicable to what they do. I show them that statement. It's like 3 or 4 sentences, and it goes through the rescission steps, but you read the requirements of that you have to have the statement of what the reason is. They made a mistake. They weren't supposed to apply. Based on the mistake, the signature is void. You rescind the signature. It voids the document that you signed to it, and all the obligations. And then you say, if this is not sufficient to void this document, get back to me within 15 days and give me notice of that. You give them the opportunity to show you how it's not quite right, so that you at least have a closing time for the validity to be perfected. It's really simple. This is how the tangible thing that they've got on us is that intangible to your will. It's up to us. That we don't is our problem. I've been telling you this for years. You got one finger you keep pointing out, all these people out in the world, these names, these bankers, these rich dead people, I don't know what all, these people that have religions that are now, whatever. You keep pointing. Now look down at your hand, you got 3 pointing back. Quit talking about your victimhood. Take the steps you need to take. You undo the things that are done against you at your own hand in a reverse order. That's how they get done. One of the first things, it's the easy thing, you rescind that signature on any document, and you better be right. You don't unjustly rescind that signature. And you don't reserve rights underneath that either. Forget this UCC application of without prejudice. That's the dumbest application I've ever seen. It has a proper application, but nobody knows. I've never seen really anybody sit down and read the UCC to see what the added obligation when you put that down is. When you intend something, don't reserve rights around that signature. So, you sign your signature, you sign away, you rescind it, the document goes void. You give them the option to come back to you to tell you that it wasn't invalid, and then to what extent, so you can cure that. Did I say cure, right? What am I saying? I am bringing the words up. This is just automatic somehow in me. I forgot all about that when the word came out before I even stopped about it. I figured I'd repeat it. Cure. Well, that cures it. How come UCC cures something and the medical profession cannot? But cure is the word in UCC under the rescission and the remedies to cure problems, to cure errors, to cure maybe crime. There's a different language. So, as I just said, jurisdictional cross. When you cross jurisdictions, you get into UCC, you notice my vocabulary almost automatically changed. In fact, it did. I mean, the word cure came out before I was thinking. It's just what you do. It's just what it does. When you constrain yourself to that law or legal, that whatever you want to call it, doesn't matter. It functions. It's what other people in seats of decision and supposed authority respond to. Why would you speak to them in a foreign language anyway? Have the battle of the dictionaries come out. Who decides that? No, just go ahead and learn their language. I mean, I keep saying I didn't learn language. Boy, I'd learned quite a few languages. It just happened to all be legalistic. You getting that, folks? I mean, it's just there is a work here, and we do have to learn language. Otherwise, they've created the environment that we have been presumed involved with. So within that matrix, the matrix is not a movie. In fact, in the chat room we were talking about, this human discussion and get your hands off me, you damn dirty ape, came to mind, and I said, like the Matrix, the Planet of the Apes was not a movie. What I didn't type and what came to mind was it was a documentary. And so you start getting this idea of where the reality is, and you start realizing, well, there is this matrix and there is this illusion. Oh, in fact, Elon Musk, the genius, just came up with the same thing. The odds are 1 in a billions that this is not a simulation. Okay, well, he's quite a few years late, but that's okay. There's one more that sees this dysfunction that starts to make everything a simulation. Everything's a fiction. Everything, to me, it makes a fiction until you make it real. And I don't mean real as in the sense of the land in servitude. Relative to you, it's actual. You have to force that because there's another program that's interfering, has an interference pattern on that. And you have to have a way to destroy that. And you can't very well do that when they got their tentacles in you. And when you get into the system and you find out, oh, this is beyond us, and they're running faster than we can do it, I'm going to have to, I can't even handle it, even though I thought I was one of the privileged few. I'm finding out I'm one of the targets as well. No different than, the fishermen keep it up and they keep trying to keep the miner out of the water. Those eco-terrorists are going to take those fishermen out. Because remember, they're trying to save the fish, and the fisherman is the only one actually killing them all. So you people that want to attack the producers, you're next on the block, Jenny. This is how this dynamic works. That the people that are in find out they're the next father, they're the ones that get taken down. Oregon Senator warns the United States government is dramatically expanding its hacking and surveillance authority. I had to go, no duh, and no Flory. No, duh. You think they allowed that? Why is this guy even making the complaint? But now he's afraid. He's been afraid. Now he's raising the alarm again. And where does he start? The Patriot Act. You didn't think that was serious? The PATRIOT Act. And in particular, Section 213. He's calling the alarm that this thing is like off the hook, folks. You know that. This is not a joke. This is something that they use this stuff at big data, folks. It's beyond actually big data. This is a full spectrum dominance. This is a military thing. You have to get this idea. This is not about your right to privacy. They've couched it in that condition to get your submission to it. And here's what I think this Wyden, I think his name was, is worried about. Now, this is a guy that's our nemesis as producers. He's a conservationist. He's the conservative guy that wants to keep everything in waste and commit human war crimes. This is the guy that's speaking this way. He's been afraid. He's on the intelligence committee or something. He sees what's happening, and now it's even got him scared. But here's maybe why. Another thing in the news, you want to know how this works. And then I want you to focus and think about this. Expand the scope of this. MI5 blackmailed pedophile politicians over Belfast boys' home abuse inquiry hears. Do I even need to read the story? I think these headlines tell it all. I won't read the story. MI5 intelligence group in UK is no different than the NSA or maybe GHQ, whatever the heck those mnemonics are. You think this is not new information either. That it was surmised that once the NSA's and your FBI's in your back server, in your back door, what can they dig up? What are they digging up? And are your so-called representatives being blackmailed? That's not a new concept. That was a few years ago that came out. I think that came out even before Snowden, right after the guy in 2005. MI5 blackmailed pedophile politicians. What's the quality of your representation, folks, with this security state that Wyden is terrified over because he's seeing that there's a dramatic expansion in hacking surveillance authority, the malware that they put in? The fact that a judge would say, oh, well, the government has the right to keep all that malware, knowledge of that malware and how they do it from you. Do you think these judges are helping you underneath some constitution actually administering an absolutism no, an absolute instead of an absolutism. You know the situation about the Second Amendment, thou shalt not infringe, and they keep trying to infringe up to a certain point. Isn't that what's going on? The same thing, the infringement, the encroachment, the incremental encroachment, that's what's going on there. And now we find out behind the scenes all these so-called these representatives, these politics, they're all sitting there being blackmailed. And this just happens to be, you notice they've been throwing out pedophilia, child pornography, things that most people would want to, just can't cotton it. So they want to see the justice, so-called. Do you think that's what Wyden is seeing? He's afraid now? I'm not incriminating him. I'm just saying he sees it. He sees it. There's nothing you can't do that couldn't be made into something to blackmail you. What's the quality of this situation now? I want to throw back in Battlefield America. They went extrajudicial. I'm telling you, folks, we're in a serious way. But the merry Cricketeers are cool with it. Fourth Circuit Appeals Court rolls back its warrant requirement for cell site locations. There's another no Flory. No duh. This is a court case I talked to you about before. I had a question on it. I said, let's hope it holds up in an appeal. Well, it didn't. They're going to remove that warrant for those cell site things. They have their own reason. I don't even want to get into the reasoning. It's so absurd. But here's the term that they're using, and this is what gets me onto the next tab, because I'm going down the tabs now. It's considered a third-party doctrine. To tell you the truth, I don't read a lot of this stuff ahead of time. My mind's not in all the fingers, but third-party doctrine is exactly the problem I keep telling you about all these other things like your free virus protections, and you look in the agreement and it says, we give this information to third parties, we give them access. You look at just about everybody that has anything that they give away for free, all your emails and such, they give third-party access. Microsoft, third-party access, Skype, big time. That's when I saw all that stuff, I just, folks, I haven't talked to a lot of y'all because I just stopped. I don't use Skype. I know a lot of you all do, and you have your reasons, but third-party doctrine, folks. I didn't know that there was a doctrine. I don't read that close. I'm not that all-knowing, huh? I got a very narrow view, but here it is. It doesn't take long to figure it out. There's a problem ahead of time. Now I know there's a name for there's an existent thing that I was concerned about, this third-party problem. The third-party doctrine allows for these governments to be the third party that isn't required to be standing under the Fourth Amendment. Notwithstanding that a corporation doesn't either. And so you can I just name it for you. I mean, what do? Do I explain it? Explain it, and while you sit there and agree to continue using your phone that have third-party attachments that allows all this to go through, to be made up willy-nilly as they will. And its problem is so bad, we've been talking about malware. Windows 10 is malware. We've been saying it. Now, that even the company must be getting hit pretty hard, because Microsoft now denies forcing Windows 10 upgrades on the very thinnest logic that, they allow you to opt out with a certain little thing you get to do, which they've made harder and harder to find, as I told you in a few broadcasts back. Windows 10, as a big data monger, is having to defend itself against the classification of malware that offers this third-party doctrine intrusion that steals away everything you thought was in the Constitution, even if it wasn't a military consequence. What I would suggest, to me, makes more sense that it is the consequence of the military occupation. This is partly why the military think tanks' writings that you were reading in the past, if you were available to you, we have some today still working through, were there to explain their control. The military has controlled the world. I just want to quickly, if you don't pay it, folks, I mean, you don't have to focus on it and look all over, but if you don't understand what's going on, the consequence of the United States doing what it's doing over in China and that ocean and everything, it seems like nothing. Folks, this is I don't know what to tell you. This is serious, serious problems. So this is serious. But anyway, that just flashed in my mind. You're not hearing a lot about all this. I mean, we talk about it periodically. I haven't touched it too much. I'm not a geopolitical guy that way. I don't know the nuances, but I'm just going to tell you, what the United States is doing in the world, and particularly, poking the bear and then getting it in China's face, the way it does, and as hypocritical or ludicrous as it does, or as foundationless as it does, and not and undiplomatic as it does. And then I'm really concerned because of reading about that selective service for women, folks. There is a war in this future, and the United States is big and bad and apparently stupid enough to pull that trigger. And it may not take long to go nuclear. And I don't want to get on the nuclear fearmongery, because the whole thing is a wrong, right? I mean, it doesn't matter how they go and they start annihilating everybody. It's that they did. And we were the Cricketeers. So, I mean, I don't know why they even haven't flashed my mind. I lost my point about that. But this is what's going, this military consequence is driving all this, the propaganda. In fact, UCY chat, they were talking about a new propaganda, foreign propaganda is being outlawed by this act going to be coming in. I didn't get a chance to really look at it. But I want to point out something to you, folks. But it's respecting the United States, or regarding the United States. The United States is a district in Washington. It covers the territory of Washington, D.C. between some states. It is foreign to everywhere. That's a notice to all y'all that are doing broadcasting. I'm not a fearmonger. I'm just telling you, this is the lock they're throwing down. I'm trying to get you active, to out all that. Have been for years. So to me, I'm just watching our own destruction at our own hands. I won't have much to say but shake my head and shrug my shoulders, and I guess I'll go to the little room with the colored pictures on it. I guess because the Cricketeers won the day. But this is the military consequence. Believe me, you go back and read the Libre Code to find out that the government, the military behind all this, can prop up anything and force it to look normal, and you could not look at the propped up entities and know it was not a military. It was military. They are ordered to make sure that they don't expose that. These companies now, the tools of the government that have become a military control. In other words, the military now is controlling policy. That's why there's no plan A at the White House. The State Department has nothing to say. It has to follow the lead of what the military psychopaths want to do. That these companies now, like Microsoft, are explaining to us through this third-party doctrine, they are the portholes of your demise. And I just say it. I don't know what to do more than just tell you that, and hope you take steps. I've been looking around. I know Tor has a question, but it's probably the best thing going. I know the government puts money into it, but it's one of the best things going. And then you have this thing called Unix for Linux. It's a whole operating system that has a double wrapper. I'm not technically savvy enough to know how well it all really, really works, but at least there's a lot less ways they're going to construct the information they need to make any one of us the target. Put us in the conundrum. Well, you can have it, but they can keep it from you, and the answer doesn't come right immediately out of the so-called judge that you should then be free. No, you see the connection and the attachment, notwithstanding that deprivation. Clearly no justice. We're in extrajudicial mode. I can't stress this enough. In some regard, I get a little bit fearful in a way, because we have no. Unless you're organized, you are going to be subject to the next is in your country. They'll just develop one. It's like it's just the next excuse, and then they're getting pretty smart, because the United States and the people of the United States are kind of stupid. They allow themselves to be divided. You're seeing it in the political campaigns as well. You see it all over the place. You see it in duality whenever there's duality. You see, whatever the opinion is, they make a counter opinion. They've got you. So I try to hear the count. So here's one of the things I try to do. Maybe this will be helpful. I don't know. Maybe it won't. One thing I try to do, I'll listen for the creation of duality, or the offer to create a duality, and I think about that for a moment. Hopefully it has to be kind of instantaneous sometimes. I think about the fact of the duality, and I say, okay, if they want to make the duality, what is the outcome they want? And what I then do is I anticipate, and I hope I'm accurate, I anticipate an outcome they want, and then I provide an answer that trumps it. Oh, I said it again. Don't want Don't want to advertise your characterize that we need to go elect that guy. But I mean, this is the thing of our language. You have to know where they're going. You have to understand this enough to know what they want, and then you show them how they can't have it, and you do it in an objective way. You don't do it by your feelings or your opinions and your other things. And that works really well. It takes a little leap of faith, if you will, in your own knowledge to be able to accurately anticipate what they want and then deny it to them for an objective basis. Typically, it's always in the law. And you don't engage that duality. You don't let it get oxygen. Now let me, maybe as an example, this gender issue, we don't know now what we're confused. And I've told you this, my belief, and I haven't been told different, and there might be some differences, I haven't heard it, I've asked, that I think this gender confusion, I'll just leave it that way, it's rooted in abuse. And you'd also know the other thing about abuse, people that are abused, the victims they embrace their abuser. So there's a lot of psychological dynamic that's not really cool here, but it's fact. But to me, okay, I don't know how to answer this gender confused, I need my own bathroom, but I'm a guy, and I'm going to go in a girl's bathroom that I know guy and gal. That wasn't a microaggression, that's how I see the world. The guy and gals are supposed to be separate, you're supposed to not have the confusion. Over the life of my time, I've seen the confusion, it's been explained to me to be an abuse, general abuse. I've never heard, and it could be out there, there's always exceptions, but for the most part, we're dealing with actually being forced, in my view, to promote an abuse to somebody and not solve the abuse in this one thing. But let's solve it. Let's solve the problem. They want us to get into a division. I refuse to waste time in the division. So I would come up with an answer, and I think it's been stated before that it was I think it's been stated. I won't be original. A lot of people have the answer. We just don't hear a lot of it. Is instead of having separate bathrooms that are already part of the infrastructure, this is just the black and the white problem they forced on us, too. It's the same difference. They just make a new title with a different type of attachment. It's the same distinction. How about if we stop this separate bathrooms, we just lock those rooms, and we just get porta potties. And we move them out in the front of the building so we promote how gender neutral we are, and you just have porta potties. That's my answer to this stupidity of this gender social warrior neutrality invade my sensibilities, make a macroaggression of my safe space. Okay, we'll answer that. We have to have that answer, folks, and you have to be pretty quick about it, and it has to be really the right one. I think that's the right one. I know it's all cumbersome, but that's not the point here. Everything that they're forcing us they want to force on us is actionable with reason. If you go there, we answer that right here. So going to porta potties seems to be the answer, and we don't have the question no more. Let's get to what's really bugging us. I don't want the sticks by the enemy being thrown at us, little spears here and there. I'm going to knock that down. I'm going to resolve it, and I'm going to now say, okay, now you got another spear, or are you going to now leave the country? You're going to get out the way or get gone, but you're not going to continue your nonsense. As long as we're dealing with the bathroom issue, we're not dealing with those that are making up the next one for you folks. And they make up part of this next one by watching you on social media and watching the trends, and they're not stupid that way. They're pretty smart that way. That's what it's all about. And so we got these third-party doctrine that's already told to us in our little agreements that sits there that we all agree to, and I'm not free of that. I'm totally throwing this stuff off. Got too much in my face to have to deal with it all. I wish I did have some answers I could just change and get a lot of this stuff settled. In other words, I do have Who-Nix. I do have it on my on the broadcaster computer, and it is in VirtualBox. Okay? Give you a hint on where you start to go to help to insulate yourself a bit. Yes, I go there, folks. So I'm trying to transfer, but there's so much to keep up with. And so I understand I'm not the purity of my own statement, but I know I'm pushing that direction. That we have to stop their intelligence into us. That we now get the other report, third party again. Google Voice search records and keeps conversations people have around their phones, but the files can be deleted, they say. The point is, Google is recording everything. Well, okay, that's not surprising. Microsoft bought Skype to do the same thing. I told you that's what it was for. I told you the NSA was probably having a trouble with the algorithm for Skype. The reason why Microsoft was tasked to buy it for an exorbitant amount, or what was told to be an exorbitant amount, was just to get the back end of that and the algorithm for the encryption. Because the government wanted the information to store. It makes a lot of sense now, doesn't it? It didn't make quite as much sense to a lot of people then, but that's okay. Google has been doing the same thing. All I can, I know I still watch YouTubes, but I got blockers that filter out the Java, all these scripts and everything as much as possible. And for all y'all that have sent me something to Google Documents or something, I don't see them. I don't get them because I've got it blocked out. I try not to use Google as much as possible. I also try to, where I can, clear out my caches and my cookies. They all track you and they're doing all kinds of things, and they're sending now to places even if you're not involved with them. But Google records, if you didn't know. The question about Microsoft and their machine that looked at you through the TV, the new censoring, they're recording and keeping everything, just like I have listed and have had listed at the bottom of the Blogcaster page, the silent weapons for quiet wars, big data, your place in the circuit of society. What's the danger? The third-party doctrine is telling us there's no protection. They've invented all this, in other words, as well. Okay, so that's the other interesting, quick thing. It's unconscionable what's going on. Given that's a contract and can be reduced to a contract, that is void. Oh, well, that's all we have to do. It's void, and we give the reason. It's unconscionable. That's it. It's my signature is rescinded for mistake. That's it. No, it can't be a frivolous claim of mistake. But the point is, you have an objection or you have an action, a remedy for a reason, and that reason is valid. You don't make stuff up here. But Microsoft has third-party doctrines. So everything you do, almost everything you do free has got a third-party doctrine. Only a few companies I have read, looked and I use their stuff. They don't have all this third-party stuff. They just don't want you stealing their software, which is cool. That's fine. I don't have any business to do that anyway, right? I mean, it's their time and effort. I'm using the benefit of their time and effort they give for me. Why would I even want to thieve their stuff? But they have the agreement that you won't. That's fine. No third-party attachment, or none disclosed, I should say. Always got to leave out that little conversation. All's well. Google, Microsoft does it. Facebook does it. Google does it now. Facebook is telling you, even if you're a non-user, and I block all Facebooks as well. I get I go to Twitters that have Facebook entries. I don't see them. I may see partial parts of it, but I can't get much of the content at all. I mean, it'll send me to a website, but there's really kind of nothing on it because I've got everything else blocked out. And maybe I'm now confirmed in why I don't do this. I don't allow a lot of this stuff onto my systems, and I try to clear them up. I know I'm not perfect. I'm sure that there's all kind of dangling chads, but I do my best. But here's partly why. Facebook begins to track non-users around the internet. You cannot even not agree to participate, and they'll track you if they get a third-party track. Talk about a tractor beam. Man, these people are just tenacious, right? This is what it's about. And they look and they make up their stuff, and they have their algorithms, and they put you through these filters that they create. And they're doing it without your consent. They're doing it without your input. You're not even considered a stakeholder without an interest with input, let alone the property owner with the intent not to be involved with them. But even non-users are involved. Company begins displaying cookie warnings for European users after expanding ad network. This is just telling us that's just the ad network, folks. I can't imagine what all the other third-party, non-disclosed third-party users are that are doing that. You know, one of them that's stated, it's not even non-disclosed. It says all law enforcement is going to be that third party that has right to the information. This is not even the question anymore.
The question becomes, are you going to allow them enough information to make up stuff that when it comes down, folks, when it's finally the point when they have to start making the encroachments, like, oh, we're going to make propaganda unlawful in the United States if it's foreign. You don't realize that everything is foreign to the United States, being in Washington, D.C., that you may be targeted even though they mention Russia, that all of a sudden you say, well, I have a First Amendment right. And they say, wait a minute, we have a different right. It's called national security. We've been non-judicial. You don't have a say against that. And they use all the connections they have made on what they thought your intent was. Like I've shown you the articles that say, this investigator that was a law enforcement officer had his own prejudices and put together stuff and created a completely fabricated reality. How many stories have we heard already? And it's not even on us yet. Facebook will now display ads to web users who are not members of its social network. The company announced Thursday in a bid to significantly expand its online ad bottom line. Essentially, what makes these companies valuable is what they can do in commerce. What they also now get paid behind the scenes is this money to implement federal security, national security type programs, where they have third-party users subject and limited only by the third-party doctrine, which is no limit at all. All your disk image belong to us, says appeals court. The government can prosecute and imprison people for crimes based on evidence obtained from their computers, even evidence retained for years that was outside the scope of an original probable cause search warrant. A U.S. federal appeals court has said in a 100-page opinion, paired with a blistering dissent. Okay, big deal. Here we have another appeals court. It's a territorial court appeals court coming from a USDC court. All it's incompetent, folks. No one's going to understand all that. This link I have for you will explain, essentially, when you look at this thing, there is really no Fourth Amendment, that we are extrajudicial. Everything on your computer is military, and they have access to it. Everyone, I can tell all you mind that are all free minds are all saying, screw that. Who cares? I'm not with you on that. I think that's a wrong view. The lack of care is you might. I don't think it's coming down so tight that because we're all just old tooth dogs here, but we'll be gone. Okay, but this is not setting the example for those coming up of how dire this consequence is to tag on to all this and allow it, notwithstanding the destruction. Then we are told and given notice we have things to do. So now they're just making up this stuff. They now have your hard drive is not even your own. The facial violation if we lived in a constitutional republic, right? But the Bar Association and its members, judges, and all this system we have proof. Again, I hope you truly appreciate what I'm telling you. In 2013, our lawsuit was about the Bar Association and 10 other legal entities and representatives and such, their destruction of the Republican form representative government by certain methods, or not really certain, any methods that allowed that. The Bar Association is the prime mover. Its whole function is to destroy your way of life. If that isn't actually the military general, well, it wouldn't surprise me to hear that it was, but if it's not, it'd be kind of surprising. But it's not, maybe because we're actually dealing in a fiscal constraint, right? Or the fiscal emergency. That's really where the bottom line is. Where do you see that? I told you it's Title 50. The appendix, we go to USC Title 12, Section 95A. And it starts out actually in 1917, Trading with the Enemy Act. Okay, so there's a big, quick connection to all that. Even if it wasn't Lincoln, even if it wasn't the actual origination of this nation and the servitudes in Article 6 of the Constitution, even if it had nothing, and Netherlands had nothing to do with that. I mean, even if the Swiss had nothing to do with that then either. It's so connected, folks. I don't know what to say. It's just so connected. There's nothing that's a mystery at this point. So that we see, I keep saying, when you see that there's no really constraint on these things that are limited form government, maybe you don't have it. If you have any inkling that you don't agree with that, maybe it's time to really start focusing. Maybe you haven't been successful. Maybe you realize how corrupt it's been, and you've had to serve. They've served their lumps upon you. Even so, see, when they served their lumps upon me, I got even more. I bowed my neck maybe a little bit more. I just understood I was given a lesson, and I said, okay, I'm not going to go that way, or to go that way gives us no measure of relief. Now, in the 15 years since all that that lesson, that hasn't happened again. So apparently what my rules have been doing, my adjustment in this battlefield America has been, again, before it was declared battlefield America, I was already fighting the war, folks. You probably, some of you were too. And you fight this for a long time and then you give up because you see that it seems, well, it is at one level completely futile, except we put that on a time schedule. Keeping the republic wasn't on a time schedule. We have so they get us to this data, this big data. It's a big sponge for information. I guess in one regard I have no worries because I have the same attitude. Oh, I'm not a criminal, but I pointed out to you that they make the stuff up. That's the problem, and they give it to people and give over to the idea that certain information can be sufficient to make up things that are enough to incriminate you on someone's what would be otherwise arbitrary and capricious notions about it. Going on along this idea here, John Rappaport writes a thing, The Rise of the Meta Criminal. Trevor Tim of the Electronic Freedom Frontier dug up some very interesting nuggets. You get a link. It was embedded in the Herald December 2013 White House task force. See, they know how to pull this together. They're on task, folks. Are you your own taskmaster? They're doing this report on spying and snooping under recommendation number 31, section 2. He found this, quote, governments should not use their offensive cyber capabilities to change the amounts held in financial accounts or otherwise manipulate the financial systems, close quote. Tim goes on, Tim quite rightly wondered, why were these warnings in the report? Certainly they have the capability. So, another point, folks, not only do they make it up, they can change it. They're inside the system. They're looking at everything and controlling everything. You think it's the fix is in? You think that they can, your representatives are not being imposed by blackmail? Well, now you now know and have the report that says that the government knows it can manipulate financial systems. It's the war, the multidimensional war that I'm telling you started in 1973, Trading with the Enemy Act, that also gets converted and accomplished into the financial destruction that we are in a war over, that they are having dominance over, the financial institution. Why I told you Panama appears to be a non-story. It's a disclosure. The government should not use its offensive cyber capabilities to manipulate financial systems. How do you know it's not already happening? And you have to say, you're all going to say, yeah, but it already is, and you see the evidence of it. Okay. Do you continue to trust in that? You put your confidence there, you put your signatures on it? Or do you see the writing on the wall and really work effectively and diligently and persistently to make an alternative such that it can be in such an overarching, uncompromising condition? It looks completely hopeless to us, folks. And in a way, that's the part of the excitement, because my understanding is it's not hopeless to us. Evil does not prevail, and it does not prevail as long as we're calling it out, as long as we're acting against it affirmatively and persistently. So it's not really up to me. It's not even an international law, folks. It's so much farther out of our hands that we are declaring our allegiance by what we do as well. The military tells us it's a military occupation by their deeds. John Rappaport says you can be a meta-criminal because that's what they use to make meta-criminals. We talked about the fact of, let me see if I can find it. I don't know where it went. It's kind of down the road here. Let me move this thing up. I have a story. What really was the problem? It was in a story here about the use of this information. And I want you to read this one as well. After the rise of the meta criminal, There's software used across the country to predict future criminals, and it's based against blacks. My whole point about this story was that it can be based against anyone. Right now it's against blacks. That's why they're the biggest population they can be. There's the biggest group to study. But the software used to predict your sentencing and everything else is made by people who make these determinations that aren't part of what you agree to or have a say, that you arrange in your arraignment hearings to be subject to, that I want you to read how they manipulate the data they get from these third parties in order to affect even the justice they might extend to you. And you can find out how whites can use it, and we're expecting worse sentences than they got versus blacks who did far less. My point here is irrelevant to the color. It's the fact of the inequality, and that so-called equal justice is actually manipulated now by digits that are manipulated by the government that pretends and tells you that it's administering justice. It's just us, and you're seeing that all the time. I'm trying to bring up the problem with this digital connection and why it's so darn important to start understanding where you can to isolate yourself as much as you can. It's not, I can't, I can just really, I have to pray it all works that way, because that's all we got in some regard. They are giving and inducing us to accept all the gifts of the benefits that they later use to choke us off with. It's a method that's worked. To me, it's just like the drug dealer handing you as a little kid, not the little goat, the little young boy or girl, your first taste of heroin or crack or whatever, and gives it to you free. Well, here's a little drink of that alcohol. Oh, you don't like it? No, it gets better. Here's another one. All he's got invested is a bottle of beer for you so young. Next thing you know is you're his friend. You want more. And he tells you, well, go walk into this little hole, and I want you to go to the bureau set, and I want you to rip off, steal and put on a bag all the stuff you find there and come back out. I'll give you another one. Then you get older and you start doing that for yourself against people. It's so subtle, this encroachment, this preying. They prey upon us as an animal, and as the human that they've constructed you to be. And you are not respectful yourself enough to stand up and say, "Get your hands off me, you damn dirty ape." Planet of the Apes was not a movie. The digital world coming, the Matrix, is not a movie. The digital world here is on the horizon for us to see, and it's all its splendor on how it's going to work. What the manipulations are and how far removed you are. And I'm just here to suggest to you over and over, as I am understanding it, until I get more information better than I can get to tell me different, unless you step up and fight the wrong that you need to make right, that little bit may be totally tangential to other things that I'm talking about, but the ripple effect of the unified action to start making right what's wrong is the reverberation and signal that starts to get sent out that counters the negative frequencies we have. If you want to get New Age, this is part of that. But in a real way, a tangible way. Each one of us is a generator, and that's our productive power. That's our creativity. But it's now been confined. It's been constrained. It's being parasitically used by others, and so you don't have the freedom to use it. You're not free to use it yourself. See, I had to change the word from freedom to free. See how fast that works? They get us sucked in these statements. I'm working hard all the time, folks. I don't ever say I'm perfect, that's for sure. You hear me watch it. If you listen, you hear me changing. I just caught myself there. I wanted you to know. There it was. I wanted to use the word freedom. No, I changed it, rephrased it to free. You're not free to use your own power, and the power is within you, and yet you've handed it over and agreed to give it to somebody else. Thank you for tuning in today. Hope some information I gave you is helpful, give you a focus. Those of you that can help, if you feel like it, hopefully we can, to give me an email, markonthebeach@yahoo.com, maybe do some research for us so I can get a comment out to give us standing in the future, should we be able to. Grimner, thank you very much for having the website and keeping up with that, and giving me a space for the blogcaster. And Bo Diddy and Grimner as well, freedomsnetwork.com, I believe. If not, Freedom's Network, the effin network. I loved that when I saw that nobody used it. I said, "Yeah, that's the effin site." Pretty fun. Just again, we can have fun, but it's really we have to be our own taskmaster. Jules at UCY.tv. Thank you for this